The first thing I felt wasn't the sauce. It was the silence. A heavy, stunned silence that landed half a second before the warm liquid slid down the side of my neck, soaked into my collar, and bloomed dark across the front of my dress. Someone laughed. It wasn't nervous. It was real. I stood there frozen, while Evan's hand hovered in the air, still gripping the serving ladle like a prop he hadn't put down yet. Red wine reduction. Thick. Expensive. He'd been bragging about it all night. "Relax," he said, voice loud, easy practiced. "It's just food. You're always so dramatic." That was the first lie of the night. My name is Claire Morgan. I was standing in my parents' backyard in suburban Ohio under white string lights they rented for their 30th anniversary party. The kind of lights meant to make everything look softer than it really is. There were about 40 people there, aunts, uncles, old neighbors, people who'd known me since I was small enough to be told to sit quietly and not interrupt. No one moved. The sauce dripped off my jaw, landed on the concrete with a soft, ugly sound. Evan smiled. Not apologetic, not embarrassed, smiling like he'd just won something. "Someone get her a napkin," he said, already turning away. "Or maybe she should just go home. This is a family thing." That was when he said it. "You don't really belong here anymore, Claire." He didn't shout. He didn't whisper. He said it like a fact. That was the moment something in me went very still. Before I go any further, let me say this. If you've ever had your own family treat you like you're invisible, if you've ever been humiliated in a room full of people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever smiled through something that should have broken you, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what happened next didn't involve yelling, it didn't involve tears, and it definitely didn't involve forgiveness. It involved timing. Evan's wife, Nora, finally handed me a paper towel, not a real napkin. A single paper towel from the kitchen, already damp like an afterthought. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My father, Thomas, stared at the grill like it had personally betrayed him. My mother, Elaine, was already halfway into damage control mode, hands fluttering, mouth opening and closing without landing anywhere useful. "Oh my God," she said finally in that thin, tight voice she used when she wanted something to go away. "You're being sensitive." Evan didn't mean it like that. I dabbed my cheek. Slow, careful. The paper towel tore slightly under my fingers. "I meant exactly what I said." Evan added louder now. "You show up, you make everyone uncomfortable. You always have." Someone behind me shifted. A chair scraped. I felt eyes on my back, then slide away. Gaslighting doesn't sound dramatic when it happens. It sounds reasonable. Calm. Logical. "Why do you always have to make things awkward?" my aunt murmured, not unkindly. "It's their anniversary." That was the second thing that snapped. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't said a word. And somehow, I was already the problem. I looked down at my dress. Navy blue. Simple. The kind of thing you wear when you don't want to be noticed. The stain was spreading dark and obvious now. Impossible to ignore. Good. Evan leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate. "Dangerous. Do everyone a favor," he said. "Clean yourself up and leave. We'll talk later. Privately. Later never comes in families like mine. Later is where truth goes to die." I reached for my purse. That's when my mother finally stepped in front of me, blocking my way like she was protecting something fragile. Not me. The moment. "Claire," she said, tight smile plastered on. "Please, not tonight." There it was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "That was wrong." Not, "I'm sorry." Just not tonight. My phone buzzed in my hand. One notification. A text from a number I hadn't saved. Unknown. "You don't owe them silence." I locked the screen. Evan exhaled sharply, already irritated that this was taking too long. "Mom, she loves playing the victim. Let her go." I finally looked at him. Really looked. Same confident posture, same expensive watch he couldn't afford without help, same mouth that had learned early how to turn cruelty into charm. "I just need a minute," I said. My voice surprised even me. Calm, even, flat. "A minute for what?" he scoffed. "To decide," I said, "how I'm leaving." That gave him pause. The party noise tried to restart around us. Someone turned the music back up a notch. Laughter flared and died too quickly. The dishwasher inside the house kicked on with a low mechanical hum, like the place itself was trying to drown us out. My mother leaned in, nails biting into my forearm. Hard. "Don't," she whispered. "You're embarrassing us." That was the third snap. Quieter. Deeper. Final. I gently removed her hand. "I've been embarrassed my whole life," I said. "You're just noticing now." Evan laughed again, sharp and short. "There she goes." I nodded once. "Give me 10 minutes," I said. "Then I'll be gone." He rolled his eyes. "Make it 5. I turned toward the table where I'd set my bag earlier, the one thing I'd brought that night that actually mattered. Behind me, my mother's voice followed, brittle and shaking. "Claire," she said, "don't do this. You always take things too far." I stopped, turned just enough to look at her over my shoulder. "No," I said softly. "This is the first time I haven't." She opened her mouth to argue. Then she said the sentence I will never forget. "If you loved this family at all," she said, "you'd let it go." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't losing my family that night. I was finally seeing them clearly. I didn't become invisible overnight. I was trained into it. Looking back, the pattern was clean, almost elegant, like it had been designed that way. Evan was 4 years older than me, which meant he arrived first, loud and certain, and everyone adjusted around him. He didn't have to ask for attention. It found him. It stayed. My earliest memory of him is standing in the driveway, 8 years old, holding a brand new bike with chrome handlebars. My father crouched beside him, tightening a bolt, explaining gears like Evan was already someone important. I stood on the porch with my backpack on, waiting for the bus. No one noticed. When Evan turned 16, a used sedan appeared in the driveway with a red bow on the hood. Not fancy, but real. Real enough to smell like freedom. My father tossed him the keys like it was nothing. "Don't wreck it," he joked. I got my first job that same year. A grocery store 3 towns over. I took the bus, then walked the rest of the way in rain or snow. My shoes were always damp by the time I clocked in. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't worth explaining. Lily came later. The baby. The miracle. The one who balanced the family. That's what my mother liked to say. Lily never learned how to wait. Her college tours were planned like vacations. Flights, hotels, group photos in front of campus signs. When she changed her major 3 times in 1 year, my parents laughed it off. "She's still finding herself," my mother said, brushing it away. I'd been finding myself since I was 12. No one clapped. I paid for my textbooks with tips from the diner. Lily studied abroad one summer in Italy because it felt right. I watched her photos load slowly on my cracked phone during my break, hands smelling like fryer oil. We didn't live in the same world even when we lived under the same roof. The bus ride to school was 40 minutes each way. I learned how to do homework standing up, gripping the metal pole, balancing my bag against my knee while the driver hit potholes. I learned how to disappear into myself, how to take up as little space as possible. That skill would save me later. Graduation came and went quietly. No banners, no party. I walked across the stage, name mispronounced, shook a stranger's hand, and stepped back into the crowd. I scanned the bleachers once, twice. I stopped looking. That night my phone buzzed with one text, from Evan. "Congrats. Can you Venmo me gas money?" I stared at it for a long time, then sent the money. That was the year my grandfather noticed. Walter Morgan lived alone in a narrow brick house 20 minutes outside town. It smelled like old books and lemon cleaner. He'd built a small medical supply company decades earlier, nothing flashy. He never talked about money. He talked about process, details, systems, consequences. I started going over on Sundays because no one else would. I told my parents I needed quiet to study. They didn't argue. Evan was usually out. Lily had activities. Grandpa Walter would already be seated at the kitchen table when I arrived. Coffee gone cold, newspaper folded neatly beside his plate. "You're late," he'd say, glancing at the clock. I took the bus, I'd answer. He nodded once. No pity, just data. He taught me how to sharpen knives properly, how to clean as I worked, how to finish things before moving on to the next. "Discipline isn't punishment," he said once, watching me dry a plate. It's respect for your future self. Those afternoons were quiet, purposeful. We didn't waste words. Sometimes he'd ask about school, not grades, concepts, why something mattered, how it worked, what the responsibility was. When I told him I wanted to go into medicine, he didn't smile. He leaned back and studied me like a problem worth solving. "Then remember this," he said. "Skill gets you in the room. Character decides if you stay." Evan never came. Lily promised a few times, then canceled. Grandpa never complained. He just reset the table to 2. Holidays made the difference sharper. Thanksgiving was noise and chaos at my parents' house. Evan carving the turkey, Lily directing photos, my mother orchestrating everything like a show. Grandpa sat at the end of the table, untouched food cooling in front of him. I caught his eye once while clearing plates. He raised his glass slightly. A small acknowledgement. Enough. Later, when everyone drifted to the living room, I sat with him on the back porch. Cold air, quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. "They won't remember this," he said suddenly, staring into the dark yard. "Remember what I asked." "This," he said, "being together." I didn't answer. "They'll remember who stayed," he continued, "who didn't leave when it got boring." That line lodged somewhere deep. I didn't realize how deep until much later. When I worked double shifts during finals, Grandpa left meals in my fridge. When I got accepted into a program no one else understood, he was the only one who asked what it meant. "You earned that," he said simply. "Not I'm proud of you. Not we always knew. Just truth." By the time I moved out, the roles were locked in. Evan was the star. Lily was the promise. I was the background noise. And Grandpa was the only one who noticed when the noise stopped. The night before I left for my first real job, I went to his house one last time. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a single photograph of him in his younger years, standing in a lab, sleeves rolled up, expression focused. "I didn't have applause either," he said. "Just work." I folded the photo carefully. As I stood to leave, he said it. The sentence that would follow me for the rest of my life. "People don't remember who talked the most," he said. "They remember who stayed when everyone else walked away." I nodded. I didn't know then how expensive staying would become. I only knew I was willing to pay it. I didn't announce my life when it finally started working. I didn't post it. I didn't ask anyone to watch. I just showed up. By my early 30s, the hospital became my real address. Long hallways, fluorescent lights that never cared how tired you were. The steady, unforgiving rhythm of monitors reminding you that mistakes don't get second chances. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud. I didn't chase attention in meetings. I became useful. The difficult cases started finding their way to me without anyone saying it out loud. The kind of cases where charts were thick, families were quiet, and everyone in the room knew the margin for error was thin. "Let Claire take it," someone would say. Not because I asked. Because I finished things. Hands steady, voice low, no drama. When something went wrong, I didn't freeze. I adjusted. When something went right, I didn't celebrate. I cleaned up and moved on. Trust is built like that. Quietly. Repeatedly. My name didn't circulate outside the building, but inside it carried weight. Attendings trusted my judgment. Nurses watched my hands. When alarms went off, I didn't rush. I narrowed my focus. That kind of work doesn't leave room for applause, just results. Back home, Evan was building a different kind of life. On paper, it looked impressive. A health tech startup, wearables, platforms. Big promises wrapped in sleek language. He talked about disruption like it was a personality trait. His apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture no one sat on. White walls, glass tables. Everything staged. He lived online. Photos at conferences, photos with lanyards, photos holding devices that weren't finished yet. Captions full of words like vision and momentum. Money flowed fast, faster than it should have. Loans stacked quietly behind the scenes. Friends became advisors. Dinners became pitches. He dressed success before he earned it. When I visited once briefly between shifts, he gave me a tour like I was an investor. "This is temporary," he said, gesturing at the space. "Just until the next round." I nodded. Temporary had become his favorite word. Lily drifted into his orbit naturally. She'd left school halfway through her second year, something about not feeling aligned. She moved in with Evan under the excuse of helping him. Organization, social media, brand energy. In reality, she needed somewhere to land. She lived off his fridge, his couch, his confidence, posted photos of a life she wasn't paying for, smiled wide, slept late, talked about plans without ever touching the ground. When the money was good, it all looked fine. When it wasn't, cracks showed. Meanwhile, Grandpa Walter's health began slipping in ways that couldn't be filtered or reframed. Congestive failure, oxygen tanks, medication schedules that didn't care about excuses. He hated hospitals. He hated fuss. He especially hated being a burden. So he didn't tell anyone. I found out because his cardiologist called me directly. He listed you as primary contact, the doctor said. We need to talk about options. I managed his care from 3 states away, calls between surgeries, adjusting dosages during breaks, reviewing labs on my phone while leaning against supply carts. I drove out when I could, late nights, early mornings, always alone. Evan sent texts, short, vague. Let me know if anything changes. Lily posted a photo once with a candle emoji. That was it. Grandpa never asked where they were. He didn't need to. On my last visit before everything ended, he looked smaller, lighter, like gravity was slowly letting him go. You're tired, he said, watching me sit. So are you, I answered. He smiled faintly. I've been tired a long time, he said. You just learned how to carry it. We sat in silence. The oxygen machine hummed beside us, steady and unbothered. I took care of something, he said suddenly. I looked at him. Paperwork, he clarified. Planning. I didn't ask questions. I trusted him. People confuse kindness with weakness, he continued. I never did. Neither did I. He passed quietly 3 weeks later. No dramatic calls, no crowd at the bedside, just a nurse's calm voice on the phone while I stood in a supply room staring at the wall. I drove out for the service alone. Evan arrived late. Lily came in sunglasses she didn't remove. My parents clung to each other like the loss surprised them. The service was brief, respectful, empty in a way that echoed. Afterward, while everyone hovered near the car discussing lunch plans, a man in a gray suit approached me. Claire Morgan, he asked. I nodded. He handed me a card. Thick paper, subtle embossing. I'm Mr. Caldwell, he said. Your grandfather's attorney. Evan was already eyeing the house behind us, mentally inventorying. Lily was scrolling. My parents were distracted by grief they hadn't budgeted for. He asked that I speak to you privately. The lawyer continued. I didn't react. He said to tell you one thing, Mr. Caldwell added, lowering his voice slightly. I met his eyes. He prepared everything very carefully. That was all. No explanation, no figures, no conditions. Just certainty. I slipped the card into my coat pocket and walked away. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, something important had been done without asking me to wait my turn. And whatever it was, I already knew one thing for sure. It wasn't meant for everyone. The music was still playing when Evan decided to finish me. Soft jazz from a rented speaker, glasses clinking, someone laughing too loudly near the patio heater. The party was trying to survive what had just happened like a body pretending it wasn't bleeding. Evan picked up a spoon and tapped it against his glass. Once, twice. The sound cut through everything. Hey, he said, smiling wide. Quick announcement before dessert. People turned, slowly, curious, hungry for something lighter than tension. My mother froze near the table. My father stopped mid-sip. Lily straightened already, lifting her phone. Evan waited for full attention. He loved this part. I know there's been some confusion, he continued, pacing just enough to look confident. So let me clear it up. He gestured vaguely like truth was an inconvenience. Grandpa left things to the family, he said. The company, the trust split evenly. Fair. Like he always wanted. A murmur moved through the crowd. Then he looked directly at me. But Claire, he said, tilting his head. She didn't get a share. Silence dropped again. Thicker this time. That was his choice, Evan added quickly. Not mine. Lily nodded beside him. Soft, supportive, rehearsed. My mother's breath hitched. My father stared at the ground. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Relief. because now I didn't have to protect anyone. I reached for my bag. The zipper sounded louder than it should have. Evan watched, amused, confident. He thought this was the moment I broke. I pulled out the folder and placed it on the table, flat, centered, deliberate. I'm going to correct one thing I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It landed. Evan scoffed. "Claire, don't do this." I ignored him. I opened the folder and turned it toward the nearest guest. An aunt, curious, skeptical. "Read the heading," I said. She leaned in, squinted. Her eyebrows lifted. "I, Walter Reed Morgan." She read slowly, being of sound mind. Evan's smile tightened. "That's not," he started. "Please don't interrupt," I said. That shut him up. I flipped the page. Not rushed. I wanted them to see the seals, the signatures, the dates. "This is a notarized will," I continued. "Executed 6 months before his death, reviewed twice, filed properly." My mother stepped forward. "Claire, honey." I didn't look at her. "The trust," I said, tapping the paper, names one beneficiary. I turned the page again. "Me." Someone gasped. Quiet, but sharp. Evan laughed. Too loud. "That's fake." I slid the document closer to him. "Check the notary number," I said. "It's public record." He didn't move. So I continued, "No. Grandpa did not leave everything to the family." I paused. "He left it to the person who showed up." Lily's face drained of color. "This isn't fair," she whispered. I looked at her then, really looked. "Neither was my childhood," I said, "but fairness was never your concern." Evan slammed his hand on the table. Plates rattled. "You hid this," he snapped. "You let me talk like an idiot." "You volunteered," I said. "I didn't stop you." He opened his mouth again. I didn't let him. "There's more," I said calmly. That was when the room leaned in. I pulled out the next document. Yellow highlights, legal language, dense. "This is the no contest clause," I explained. "If anyone challenges the will or trust, they receive nothing, and they pay legal fees." My father finally spoke. "That's standard?" "Yes," I said. "When the testator expects entitlement." Evan swallowed. "And this," I continued, sliding the third packet forward, "is why I didn't argue earlier." I tapped the header. "Assignment of debt." Evan's eyes flicked down, then widened. "No," he said. "No, no, no." I nodded once. "I purchased your outstanding loan," I said, quietly, legally, "last month." Lily grabbed his arm. "Evan, the lender was eager," I added. "Your payments were inconsistent." "You can't do that," he barked. "I already did." I flipped to the page with the signature. Mine. Effective immediately, I read the note, "is accelerated due to default." His breath came faster now, short, sharp. "That means I continued the condo, the equipment, the accounts are no longer yours." The crowd didn't move. Phones came out, not openly, subtly. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." And finally I said, pulling the last sheet, "This arrived yesterday." IRS letterhead. Heavy ink. Unmistakable. Notice of audit, I read. Discrepancies between reported expenses and documented revenue. Evan staggered back like he'd been struck. "You're trying to ruin me," he said hoarsely. I closed the folder. "No," I said. "I'm just not saving you anymore." He looked around. At Lily. At my parents. At the guests. No one stepped forward. "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "I only stopped carrying the consequences." My mother began to cry, quietly, into her hands. "This is cruel," she whispered. I met her eyes for the first time since the sauce hit my skin. "No," I said. "This is complete." Evan's voice cracked. "You think you're better than us?" I tilted my head. "I think I'm done." The music had stopped at some point. I didn't know when. All I knew was this: every illusion he'd built, money image leverage, was gone. And for the first time in his life, Evan had nothing left to stand on. Except the truth, which he had never learned how to carry. The collapse didn't come all at once. It came in notices. First, Evan stopped answering his phone. Then his apartment listing disappeared. A week later, the condo lights went dark. By the end of the month, the word bankruptcy showed up in a courthouse database like a cold footnote to a loud life. Chapter 7. Liquidation. No appeal. The startup vanished quietly. No farewell post, no apology thread, just a dead website and an inactive account that still showed photos of a life he could no longer afford. I didn't watch closely. I didn't need to. Lily lasted longer than I expected. Pride kept her upright for a while. She tried selling clothes online, tried freelancing, tried calling distant friends whose names she'd dropped when things were good. Eventually, reality collected its due. She took a job at a coffee chain near the interstate. Early mornings, late shifts, the kind of place where the floor is always sticky and the tips are never what you hope for. I saw her once by accident months later while traveling for work. She didn't recognize me at first. When she did, she looked away. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I didn't feel anything sharp, just distance. My parents waited longer. They always did. Their letter arrived in the fall. Thick envelope, familiar handwriting. My mother's perfume clung to the paper like muscle memory. They said they were sorry. They said they didn't see it then. They said they should have protected me. They said they were proud now. The word now did too much work in those sentences. I read it once, standing by the sink, still in scrubs, the dishwasher humming beside me like it always had. I folded the letter neatly. Then I burned it. Not in anger, not in ceremony, just completion. I didn't call. I didn't respond. I didn't block them either. Silence didn't need reinforcement. The money moved efficiently. Grandpa had planned that too. Shares transferred. Trust liquidated. No drama, no headlines. Just numbers shifting from one column to another. The kind of movement that only matters if you're paying attention. I didn't upgrade my life. Same condo, same car, same routine. The only change was what I stopped carrying. I established the Walter Morgan Scholarship quietly. No press release, no gala, just a fund administered through a local medical foundation in his name. Full tuition, books, housing, for students who had the grades but not the backing. Students who'd been told almost their whole lives. I read every application myself. The essays weren't polished. Some were barely legible. But the patterns were familiar. Working nights, taking buses, showing up alone. That mattered more than perfect grammar. The first year we funded 3 students. One of them sent a thank you note written on lined paper, words crowded together like she was afraid of wasting space. I kept it in my locker at the hospital. Life settled into something clean. No chaos, no performances, no rescue missions, just work. The operating room has a way of stripping everything else away. Once you're scrubbed and nothing outside the sterile field exists. Not money, not family, not memory, just hands, just breath, just the next decision. I stood under the lights one morning, shoulders relaxed, heart steady, guiding a resident through a delicate repair. The monitor beeped evenly. The room trusted me. That trust felt earned. As we closed, the resident glanced up. "How do you stay so calm?" I didn't answer right away. "Practice," I said finally, and meant something else. I never saw Evan again. Not really. Once I thought I caught his reflection in a gas station window while driving out of state. Unshaven, thinner, anonymous. He looked away first. That felt right. The past stopped knocking after that. On my worst days, I still hear my mother's voice sometimes. If you love this family at all, I let it pass. Love isn't endurance. It isn't silence. It isn't staying where you're diminished. I didn't lose my family that night. I only stopped hoping for something they never chose to be.